The Spotlight, shining a light on podcasts and videos that have caught our attention.
Hi and welcome to The Spotlight. My name is Jen Spiker and today I'll continue highlighting a video from Creation Ministries International. Many people around the world claim to have seen UFOs or experienced interactions with aliens. Is there a viable naturalistic explanation for these experiences? Gary Bates is a best-selling author on the topic of UFOs and aliens. In this Creation Ministries interview, Gary presents a Christian perspective on something most people only associate with science fiction movies and books.
The Spotlight with Jen Spiker.
Some of this might be due to the popular idea of aliens and that even being possible. So the evolutionary worldview coming into existence 200-ish years ago has influenced how this phenomenon manifests.
Yep, definitely. It's changed over time. There's no question. It's changed in the last 100 years. It's only since about the 1940s, which corresponds with the jet age, that we start to see the idea of flying discs the most popular shape in the 70s was the triangle shape. And, I have no idea why, to be frank.
And so people spotting a UFO, they'd usually see a triangle.
That was very, very common, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess there's also, since roughly the 60s, I know at least in America and Australia, there's evolution's been taught in all schools since about that age. So you've got that worldview being set in people's minds, so they're interpreting this phenomenon that way.
Let me just say something here.
Yeah.
So in my experience, most Christians also don't have a problem with the idea that God created aliens and they're possibly visiting us as well. So the door is definitely open on that one, and that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah, I do want to touch on that because I've experienced the same. There's a lot of Christians that say, okay, God could have created things. So instead of evolving in different places, God could have created aliens on other planets. So we're going to hit that one and talk about what the Bible says on that. I'd like you to explain that to us. So we've talked about the July 2023 congressional hearings. But what about, there's something even more recent than that. September 2023, we had the little aliens in the Mexican government. What's that all about?
Yeah, and look, there's a term in ufology, which is kind of the study of UFOs. I suppose I qualify as a ufologist. But and it's called debunker. So when something comes up, you're always too eager to put it down. So let me just say, I've already said there is something going on that we need to quantify. Yep. But in this case, this is one of those that is media hype. And unfortunately, the gentleman who brought forward these two supposedly alien bodies, and look, to be honest, they look fake. And I think it's because they are. You've got to dive underneath and deeper in the press reports. So you see things like alien bodies. Now, the gentleman that produced these, his name is Jamie Mousen. I mentioned him in my book. He's a well-known Mexican ufologist. He's been criticized and found out hoaxing and faking stuff before, etc. There was a Peruvian mummy that was allegedly alien in the past. And what they say are things like, we are getting scientific research done on this. Yes. But they're not telling you the results of that. So when you hear, they're getting scientific research, the initial inclination is to think, the scientific research is supporting the claim. But you can go on there and you can see that the scientists and the body that he sent it to have distanced themselves from his claims, right? And the best we can find out, because it takes a while, and they'll officially publish a report and probably a journal article somewhere, that it's an assemblage of llama bones and there are some human bones in there and all sorts of stuff like that. And this reminds me of another episode, which I wrote about, another famous ufologist called Stephen Greer. He's a former medical doctor. He had a movie called Sirius. I've written a review on creation.com about that. But it was one called The Atacama Alien, and there were pictures of it. And it looks humanoid, but it's got a very weird-shaped head, etc. And it's definitely a mummified organism. So in the movie, he said, we are getting DNA testing done on this. Wow, they're getting DNA testing. It must be real. But then later, the organization that was doing the DNA testing came out and they said, it's human. It was a deformed fetus. It was the case of dwarfism, and in the very, very dry desert in Peru, it had desiccated the body. But because of its, abnormalities, it had a weird-shaped head, and so on. And that kind of reminds me, just on that, we mentioned the congressional hearings.
Yep.
There was a former military intelligence officer, Air Force officer named David Grush, and I've been sent a lot of emails about this. I watched it. He was asked by one of the politicians, he said, and the question was, have you recovered alien bodies? And again, I'm going to be fairly critical here because his answer really told me everything that I needed to know. He didn't answer yes or no. He said, we have recovered non-human biological material. I mean, what does that mean? Yeah. Right? I mean, it could have been a bug on the windscreen. I mean, it's anything that is non-human could be biological material. So why do I say this? People are complex beings. We either put them into categories, they're mad or they're bad. But we talked about our worldviews and our beliefs shaping apart. And I've experienced that there are very, very sincere people who believe that aliens are visiting us and the government's covering it up. And sometimes the end justifies the means. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want you to believe, Scott, what I believe. So if I'm not quite candid with the truth and it causes you to investigate more, maybe I can get you, on board with us, etc. So when somebody gives a bit of an evasive answer like that, it tells me, okay, he's not playing with a straight bat, as we'd say in Australia.
Interesting. But you said you're not a debunker. And so you recognize these experiences that these people have had. So I think what you're saying, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying, okay, I acknowledge that some of these people, even the people that are fraudsters, for want of a better word, that are putting forward things as real alien bodies, but they're not. Would you say that they're probably an experiencer, someone that's had an experience, because as we said, 4 million people, and that's just in the US, have experienced alien abductions. They're an experiencer, and they want other people to know that this is a real thing, because to them it was very real. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that can be part of it. They might not be experiencers themselves, but they've met lots of people who've had experiences. They have similar stories. Then you think, well, they can't be watching all the same science fiction movies. Yes. So there has to be something going on. And that is the experience of genuine researchers. And indeed, it's my experience. When I'm meeting people, you can find a pattern, particularly at the levels of abductions, which is where I think, later on we can talk about that, but I think that's where we're going to really unpack what's going on. Yeah,
and that pattern was what was very interesting to me. I mentioned in your movie, Alien Intrusion, how I'd heard that figure that, and we talked about it earlier, so 90%, first of all, 20 million people in the US seen UFOs, and you said 90% of them can be explained by physical phenomenon, but there's 10% that can't.
Yeah, but the 10% that can't doesn't necessarily mean that it's alien technology or something supernatural. It just means we don't have enough information at the time to identify it. So let me tell you what actually real UFO researchers do. And I know them. They're friends of mine. They work for MUFON in the United States. They go out, they write it down, somebody says, this is what I saw, what time of the day or night, what was the environmental conditions like. Then they'll say, was the Air Force or anybody conducting drills, was the moon out? They'll investigate all of these things. And so sometimes we don't have access to all of that information. So it might be explained as man-made or even natural phenomena. We mentioned the planet Venus. There's things like lenticular clouds, flocks of birds that people see, etc.
You're telling me the space station, you've seen the space station go across the sky, and that looks like a light.
And it looks like it's traveling, it's in a straight line. And if you don't know what you're looking at, and because of evolution and science fiction, people look up and go, I just saw a UFO. That's what happens.
Yes.
Where we can unpick it, though, is there is a small percentage that there is unquestionable evidence of them doing what I would describe as supernatural things. That is, they appear, they disappear, they change shape. When I say something accelerates or it does a right angle turn without slowing down, I mean, you would be splattered up against the walls of your craft if you're trying to do those things. And it takes science fiction to overcome that. If you watch Star Trek and Jean-Luc Picard, says, make it so, and they accelerate into warp factor 5, they've got these things called inertial dampeners to stop you getting splattered up against the wall and that type of stuff. But that really is in the realm of science fiction, and it's not a matter of having advanced technology. This annoys people. They say, well, you can't say this because we don't know what they'll develop in the future. But we're basing it on what we do know, right? Not what we don't know. Advanced technology, is it really going to make you appear and disappear from one dimension to another? I don't think so. Yeah,
and some of those things I want to get to talk on later about the sharp right-angle turns, the incredible G-force that you'd experience. Is it realistic that technology in the future will overcome some of these issues? After all of these years of investigation, it appears like the government doesn't have an answer. They're not saying this is UFOs. They're not saying this is UAPs now. Right. But what they're not saying what it is. It's just a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Was that right?
Unidentified anomalous phenomenon.
Okay, there we go.
I still think nothing has changed. Even though they're being more candid now than they were in the past, they still don't know what they're looking at. Because at the end of the day, you are going to have to collect a crashed craft. You're going to have alien bodies to try to determine something. And, we can't lasso or get my tractor beam in to haul in one of these UAPs or whatever. And despite the claims of there being crashed craft, there are none. Okay? It's as simple as that. But they do leave marks. They've been known to affect our environment. Okay? Just like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, lights can go off. Strange magnetic forces appear, so they certainly can affect our environment and our realm. And that's why I say there is something serious going on. And, anybody who's seen or experienced these things will tell you that they are real. But how do you investigate something that appears and disappears?
This is The Spotlight, and we've been hearing from Gary Bates with part of a long-form interview produced by Creation Ministries International, exploring the mysterious world of UFOs and aliens. I'm Jen Spiker, and next time on The Spotlight, we'll hear more rebuttals of popular theories about aliens by Gary Bates. If you can't wait and want to watch the interview in full, you can do that right now in the Free Vision app. Just tap the Watch tab and scroll to the Creation Ministries International channel for this and other fascinating interviews.
For more great podcasts and videos like the one featured today, check out vision.org.au or the Free Vision app.